But it's also important for us to understand that that scenario, one bomb, one city, is not the only nuclear danger we face, and in fact, it is probably not the most likely danger that we face. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the medical consequences of a regional nuclear war and of a large-scale war between nuclear powers. Professor Robach, in his comments earlier, set the stage for this discussion of a regional nuclear war, considering what would happen to the world's climate if only 100 Hiroshima-sized bombs were used. I'm not going to review all of the data that Dr. Robach presented, since I can't show you my slides anyway, but let me just sort of cut to the important point on this. Dr. Robach described the initial studies that we did on food production based on the climate disruption that followed the Soviet nuclear war. And those studies showed significant declines in corn production in the United States, about 12% over a full decade, and rice production in China, about 15% over a full decade. Those were the original data that came out about 2 years ago. And based on that, we looked at, well, what's that going to do to human populations? And the fact is that the world is very ill prepared at this moment to deal with the drop in food production of that magnitude. There are grain reserves that amount to only about 2 months of consumption. They'll use those very quickly. And there are about 870 million people in the world at baseline who today, absent any further problem, are malnourished. They're getting on average about 1,800 calories a day, which is just enough to maintain their body mass and to enable them to do a little bit of physical work. Those people are terribly vulnerable and cannot withstand a significant further decline in food consumption. There are also in the world today about 300 million people who live in countries where the nutrition is good, but where much of the food is imported. And in the event of a regional nuclear war that had the kind of impact on food production that Professor Robach described, those people would also be at risk, because international commerce in food would stop, and they would not be able to get the food imported that they need. And based on those figures, we estimated in a report we released in 2012 that up to 1 billion people worldwide would be at risk of starvation in the aftermath of this limited regional nuclear war. Now, since then, Dr. Robach and his colleagues have generated some additional data on food production in China. And they have shown that where rice production, which we looked at initially, goes down about 15%, wheat production, which is just behind rice in its significance in Chinese food stores, that goes down to over 30% for a decade. And in the first 5 years, it's about 39% decline. They also showed that there would be significant declines in corn production in China, which is an important crop to feed animals. And based on this newer data, we had to rethink the conclusion that 1 billion people were at risk, because we now have to consider what's going to happen in China. Food declines of this magnitude would quickly, within a year or two, deplete the reserves which China maintains, and put the Chinese population at risk also. Another 1.3 billion people. The situation in China would probably not be quite as severe as in the developing world, but we don't know that for sure. And so our conclusion is that as many as 2 billion people could be at risk of starvation in the event of a limited nuclear war. Now, this is based on some relatively limited data. There's an urgent need to generate more data about this, to look at other food crops in other countries. And I would put that forward as something that I hope might flow from this conference in the coming months, that these kinds of studies could be undertaken. 1 billion, maybe 2 billion people dead over a decade in the aftermath of a limited war confined to one part of the globe. That is a disaster unprecedented in human history. We've never lost a sixth of the human race in that short period of time for any cause. But that is not the worst of the dangers that we face. The worst danger is a large-scale war between the United States and Russia, and I want to describe it to you a little bit. I was hoping to start by talking to you about an attack on one city. I was going to use New York, which is, I'm sure, well known to most of you. I don't really need to do that. Several people today have already described what happens when a single city comes under attack. But what I would say is this. In a modern attack on New York, there would probably not be one bomb. There would probably be many bombs at many different targets. The average size bomb, probably in the range of about 300 kilotons, assuming that it was Russian that made the attack. In preparing my scenario, I looked at 9 probable targets in New York City. The financial and administrative centers on Wall Street and in Midtown, the major airports, Newark, LaGuardia, Kennedy, the 3 major bridges which knit New York City together, the Arizona, Washington, and Florence Next bridges, and the big industrial complex in former Brooklyn Navy Yard. At each one of these target points, a firewall would form within 1,000th of a second, reaching out from 3/4 of a kilometer in every direction, 1.5 kilometers across. Within this area, the temperatures would rise to 10 to 20 million degrees, and everything would be vaporized. The buildings, the trees, the people, the upper level of the earth itself just disappeared. To a distance of 2 kilometers in every direction, the explosion would generate winds in excess of 500 to 600 kilometers per hour, and blast pressures greater than 10 psi. Mechanical forces of that magnitude would totally level wooden buildings, masonry buildings. A modern steel and concrete building of this type would see the walls, the floors swept out, and a steel skeleton would be left standing. To a distance of 6 kilometers in every direction, the heat would be so intense that everything flammable would burn. The wood, the cloth, paper, heating oil, gasoline, plastic, it would all ignite. Hundreds of thousands of fires, which over the next half hour would coalesce into a firestorm. In this case, covering about 960 square kilometers, about 24 by 40 kilometers. Within this entire area, the temperature would rise to about 800 degrees centigrade. All the oxygen would be consumed, and every living thing would die. Beyond this firestorm, the destruction would continue. There would be millions of people, literally in the case of New York, with severe injuries, the kind that were so graphically illustrated in Dr. Tominaga's talk. People with 2nd and 3rd degree burns, people with internal injuries, people with broken bones, people with radiation exposure. They would need urgent medical attention, but it would not be available because most of the hospitals would be destroyed. Most of the doctors, most of the nurses would be dead. There'd be no electricity to power the x-ray machines and the cardiograms to light the operating rooms. All the medical supplies would be used up in the first half hour. And like the little boy burned chasing butterflies on the mountain that Mr. Yoshida described for us this morning, the vast majority of these people would die without medical attention, in great pain. In the case of New York City, the death toll from this attack would be something in the range of 12 to 15 million people. And if this attack were part of a large-scale war between the United States and Russia, this level of destruction would be visited on every major population center in both countries. And if NATO were drawn into the conflict, most of the great cities of Europe as well. A study that we did in 2003 showed that if only 300 warheads in the Russian arsenal got through to targets in the United States, 75 to 100 million people would be dead in the first half hour. In addition, the entire economic infrastructure of the country would be destroyed. The public health system, the communications network, the transportation system, the food distribution system, it would all be gone. All the things that a modern society requires to keep its people alive would be gone. And it is probable that in the months following this attack, the vast majority of the Russian population, the vast majority of the American population, a large portion of the European population would die from starvation, from exposure, from infectious disease, from radiation poisoning. But again, as was the case with the limited war in South Asia, it's not the direct effects that are most devastating. It's the climate destruction. As Professor Robach showed us, a war involving just the warheads that will still be left to the United States and Russia when New START is fully implemented in in 2017, that war will drop temperatures across the planet by an average of 8 degrees centigrade. In the interior regions of North America and Eurasia, the temperatures will drop to 30 degrees centigrade. For several years, in the temperate zones of North America, there will not be a single, Northern Hemisphere, there will not be a single day free of frost. Food production will stop, ecosystems will collapse, the vast majority of the human race will starve to death, and it's possible that we will become extinct as a species. This is the danger that we face. I am a representative today of the International Physicians Organization, but I'm also an American, and for all the flaws of my country, I love it very much. Nonetheless, I do not think that my country, or any other country, should have within its power the ability to inflict this kind of devastation on humanity. The P5, US and the rest of the P5, are very unhappy that we are focusing on the humanitarian consequences of nuclear war. And they're even more unhappy that we are talking, many people around the world, including many people living in those P5 countries, about the need to abolish these weapons completely. It's a very bizarre reaction. It frankly reminds me of the behavior I see in some of my drug patients in the emergency room. You tell them they can't drive home, that they're impaired and that they're a danger if they try to get into their car. They don't like this. They get indignant, they get angry, they tell you they're okay, they know what they're doing, no one's going to get hurt, get out of their way. It's a very unpleasant situation, and there's an initial inclination to just get away from them. But when people are engaging in dangerous behavior, and they're impaired in their judgment, that's when other people need to step in. In the United States, we have an expression, friends don't let friends drive when they're drunk. Perhaps among nations, the expression should be among nations, friends don't let friends build nuclear weapons. By that criteria, the P5 need a lot of friends right now. They have made it clear that they are not going to lead the way to eliminating the nuclear weapons. And so it's up to the rest of the world to do that. This is a huge responsibility. It's unfair that it falls on you, but that's the role, that's the fate that history has dealt us. And so that's the challenge that we all face today. How do we prevent this horrible disaster from taking place? Destruction of the kind that I've described will erase everything that has been bequeathed to us by our ancestors. It will eliminate the possibility of our descendants having a future. Our children and our children's children, they don't have a voice in our council. They can't speak out against dangerous nuclear policies that threaten their existence. And so it is up to us to speak for them. This is the task that all of us face. It is an incredible responsibility. It is also a great opportunity to do good for the world. I want to close my remarks by thanking all of you for what you've done already, thanking you even more for the things you're going to do, and by expressing to you my firm belief that you are capable of finishing this great work and eliminating these nuclear weapons forever, so that indeed our children and their children can live. Thank you.
Dr. Helfand, a brief presentation, a very strong message.